Okay, so this is a small video about how to use Fusion 360 if you want to cut a design pattern, and basically how I use it to do some SVG related drawing. What I do is we use a combination of three software: Fusion 360, we use Inkspace, and sometimes we require GIMP in case the outlines are not clear. And then I will, in this video, we will see how we go, take a picture and let's say if we want to cut that design pattern, how we can do it. So first, let's say we go to internet and search for Celtic knot, and then let's say images, let's say like this. Okay, and then right, if we want to basically, you like this design, save it, you save it as a, let's say this PCC, and then you want to save somewhere images, then you want to say not one dot jpg. Try to save as jpg even if it is a png, so the transparency will go away and it makes little things are easier. Sometimes png works because png is high fidelity, so just try out in both the options which one works out. And all then you have to do is go to your, wherever I save the images, take the image, run the Inkspace, save the image. And Inkspace already has a tracing bitmap feature. Tracing bitmap is built on a project called Portrace. You can download, sometimes it doesn't work, so you can use the Portrace utility. So Portrace, and in the Portrace utility, basically you can use it to convert the images too. So you can run Portrace as uh, as a command line tool that can give you, and you can read about Portrace here, or you can go to Inkspace. And in the ink space, basically you can just take the image, and then it has a trace bitmap feature. It's also there on the I think it's there in somewhere in the path trace bitmap. So trace bitmap, what you do is, this is right now a bitmap page. A bitmap image is a pixelated image, while SVG image is basically a image that tells how these graphs are built using points, lines, and curves. So, and many other things. So SVG is basically a what we can call it as kind of a symbolic image, while this is a pixelated image, right? So once you do it, you like it, okay, this is tracing looks good, you can say apply, and then it will apply this. So this one, when you double click, you will see the points. This is showing the entire SVG curve and what are different points, and you can manipulate it. Once the image is traced, you like it, you can go and zoom in into it, and that's what I highly recommend. Zoom and especially look at the curve. Sometimes this is weird, like you see here, little weirdness is there, here little weirdness is there, here little weirdness is there. If you're okay with it, and generally you might be okay with it, because on a machine, this much of this so this is not clean, but this basically means it's probably 0.001 mm on your machine when you are cutting or whatever you are doing, which is probably ignorable. So anything less than 0.001 you won't cut it. And probably if you have a machine at home and you are using the open builds or any other CNC machine, and let's it's a heavy, more than 2000 pound, chances are you really don't care about less than 0.3000. So don't have to worry about it, just say okay. Okay, so we'll remove the original image. Okay, one other thing that I like to do it is, I try to tend it to move it to up, and then just all you have to do is save. And let's say we save desktop, and then we say uh, on the desktop I will save it as I don't even need to save it in desktop. I just go to same location, see, and then I will save it as not one dot p dot svg. That's what I usually do. I save the image and its svg version as same. Then what we have to do is in Fusion 360. So generally when I try to do when I so generally when I'm not playing around and I'm working doing some serious work, what I do is I basically choose I draw whatever size I want, and I Uh, Okay, so we come to Fusion 360. So one thing you have to remember in Fusion 360s, there are many ways to use it. So I recommend you can go to create rectangle and you do center rectangle. I highly recommend try to do things which are mirrored and around center. Try to use the option that are centered as much as possible and try to draw around origin. So think of it as much as the mirror escape you can do, that's better. For example, if I do on center, I have four mirror directions. If I do it on here side, I only have maybe one mirror direction. So, and you can run S and then go to rectangle and then choose center point rectangle. You can go to the menu and choose a center point rectangle. Choose here, my snap is on, so it should do it. And then what I do is you can dimensionize it. So I can say width is equal to, let's say, I think it is 3.5, right? And it will automatically add a dimension that, and then I will say, right. So this way now I have a center point rectangle. It's all black lines. So and then the two dimensions created. You can go and see the dimension here in the modify change parameters. You will see two parameters already created for you, and you can modify the parameters here. And let's say what I want to make it. See, it basically is changing it's dimensionizing it. So that's how I always create it. So this is now 3.5 and that's a great tip. Like you can create the dimension, sketch dimensions here. Now this is a parametric design and then I can change my, the object that I am building on in there. But generally if you're inserting a SVG, you know, you will fine tune it. So you cannot take a fine tune SVG and design it on a different object or a different plane. That generally won't happen. You generally would design, for example, let's say if I'm designing this for my lighter, the design, the way I'm doing this, the way I will manipulate, the way I change the SVG and this drawing would be a little different than I would doing on a wood, right? So generally what I do is I create two separate ones. If I'm doing on a wood or if I'm doing on a metal, those two designs I would just keep them separately because they require a little bit more fine tuning. But sometimes it just works. So but I start with the dimensional drawing, so that way my manipulation is much less, right? And I will show you how I do it in both the cases. So now I have this. Uh, a 3.5 by 3.5 square. All I have to do is now just extrude it. And so let's say zero point 0.5, because most of these works we are doing is engraving and shallow depth cut. So 0.5 is more than enough. If you look at the dimensions on a let's say on a thin sheet of metal work, let's say if a lighter or any metal pieces there, you won't go beyond zero point 0.1 mil. So this is fine. And then what we do is we go insert sketch. We are going to insert our SVG here. Okay, so this is done. We go here, insert SVG, choose the SVG. So it was in C2. Then we tell us which face. Okay, and insert it. I highly recommend you zooming is as much as possible, but it will see when you are zooming in it might not work easy, because what happens is uh, inserting SVGC, for example, now this is much closer, this widget to move it around is much closer to this, so it makes it a little harder. Sometimes it's too far. So let's say if I'm zooming here, it's so far. If I want to move it here, it's not easy. But I recommend zooming it as much as possible and seeing where you want to put it. uh, you can expand it and then move here. See, now this problem is, if as I'm expanding, this distance between this is increasing, and at some point I cannot zoom further and it will go out. For example, now this is going out, right? So that's the problem. You cannot uh, zoom as much, but that's okay. So I just want it to be in there, and I think this is good for me. I would say okay. Okay, now this is looking green. What does the green? Green means it is all logged in. So if you look at the constant, if I select this lock is here. That means it's a lock constant. So, and I cannot edit the points and I cannot mirror it. What if you look at this image, this is mirror, this is some mirror, this is some mirror, this is some mirror. this is mirror to this. So there are different many things that are mirror to. If you want to convert into manual and then do it, it becomes difficult. So what we want to do it is select the whole thing, go here, unlock it, so it will make it blue, and finish guys. Now it is blue. I can edit a specific points things and edit and trim and do whatever I want to do. So now this is a, you know, these are unlocked lines and curves in the Fusion 360 speak. And all I have to do is, let's say if I want to just trace it, I can trace it, or if I want to make a shallow depth cut, I can do that. So let's do some shallow depth cuts and some tracing. So now I do it as extrude. uh, I want to change the view a little bit so I can see the depth. I go here, I will extrude it, I will select, let's say, these four squares, and since I'm going to do it, let's say, on a piece of metal, I really don't need to go beyond 0.01 inch point. So I will say 0.01, and then it has to be negative. So it's down. And then I go to sketch. I see my sketch and I have everything. So now this is there. I will save this drawing. Let's say not one dot demo. Okay. And then I go to my manufacturing. Okay. And in the manufacture, uh, the outside one are just trace. Right, so I select, let's say I want to trace this, I want to trace this. So I want to trace this, and the tracing tool, I will select it. I already have built my tool. You can use any tool you want. So we choose the tool. In the heights, adjust the heights, because it will go too much back and forth. You really don't want to have high heights, otherwise we'll be wasting time in ramping in and out. So I just make it 2 mm, and the feed height is also 2 mm, and then that's it. So it looks good. It's not going too high and wasting time on that, and the patterns will look like this. I can go and simulate and see it how it looks, and speed up a little bit. Okay, it looks good. It has been able to optimize the path itself, because I selected this in the first this area, but it was able to optimize, so the paths are optimized. I say exit simulation, this looks good, and then I will go to the pocket. And while selecting pocket, you need to zoom it. Make sure you are selecting either uh, these inner boundaries. You're not selecting the top boundaries, or you are selecting the surface. In the earlier Fusion version, there was some issue when you selected this face, it was not doing the proper job, but the idea is to select these lines. Don't even try to select the surface. That works best in the most of the cases, but it wouldn't make much difference. But in certain cases, it's good idea to just do it with the lines. You select the lines and then hit OK. Then it has used the same tool and it has cut the curves we have choose. So yeah, so this is good. This looks good, and I think that trace looks good. I'm using the same tool, so it makes things easier. I will just now go and say generate the G code, and then I'm using GRBL machine, so I will say not one design. That's it, and then this tracing has been done. Sometimes there's one more things that I want to do. Sometimes when you cut it, you might not like this tracing is fine, but you don't like the trace. So you want to do a deeper trace, or sometimes what happens is the distance between these two lines is so small that you really cannot do it. So in that case, what there is a trick you do, you go to design, and then you go to your sketch, edit the sketch again in your timeline. You can go through the timeline and do it, and then you choose offset and select this, whatever you want to do. You can do choose offset here and say OK, and you finish a sketch. And then when you go to manufacturing and do that for all your curve, and in your trace, you go edit your traces, and in the trace geometry you select this one also. Okay, so now you have two traces, and let's see how does that looks. um, you see, so now that has two, and when you will look at it, it will create a little better. And then what you can do is you can change the distance to be too closer and make it little higher depth, and you can create really cool designs with it, right? Sometimes what I do is, if I want this elevated, I leave this as is. I will do a cut here, and I will do a cut little there, so it will make it elevated. For example, let's say here it do it. I will do the offset again. Okay, so now I will go I will go and select offset. I will select this one. This time I will go little outside, and I say okay, finish a sketch, and then in my design I go to manufacture. Then in my trace I edit it, and then if I look at trace geometry, I will unselect the original I have selected, and I will select this. Okay, select it. So now this was the original line. Now I will trace around that, and I can choose a different tool for those two traces. So I cannot do it here. So what I do is I will go and deselect this one, deselect that one. Okay, and I say okay. So when these selected, I will go and do. So I will do 2D trace, and this time I will select the outside one and inside one, right? And once I've selected the outside inside, it's not going to do trace on the line different, and the tool I can choose different. And let's say I don't know what which ones we have. We choose a pal and mill, and then this one I think it is too big for it. The height is there. Let's see how it looks. You see, so if you look at closely, it has this whole area is there. We have traced outside it internally on this and this, so it will create a really good design on it. So let's trace it, simulate it, and then run it. See this and this. So your that will be little bit looking like a curve popping up. So that's the tip on how to use it in there. Okay, that's it. And thank you. And reach out to me if you need any other questions. That's all.